What's up, guys? This is Chris from DraftDashboard.com. Here are my DFS picks for NBA Sunday, March 21st. These picks apply for DraftKings and FanDuel. Before I get started, please drop a like on this video and hit that red subscribe button and hit that bell icon so you don't miss our new videos. In this video, I'm going to go over my top picks for today's NBA slate. And if you stick around to the very end of this video, we'll use the Draft Dashboard tools to make a DFS lineup using the picks we just made. Okay guys, we have a 6-game slate tonight, so let's take a look at the point guard position. With Ben Simmons out, I like Shake Milton from the Philadelphia 76ers playing the New York Knicks, who have a good defense overall, and they've been good versus opposing point guards. But Shake Milton has averaged 22.1 fantasy points per game on the season, playing an average of 25 minutes per game with a 24% usage rate. He scored 33 fantasy points in 35 minutes last game. He's projected at 29 fantasy points here tonight. That's 5.3 times value. He's $5,500 FanDuel salary and $200 less on DraftKings. So I like that DraftKings price. It's hard to find players that are priced less on DraftKings than they are FanDuel. Should get plenty of minutes and a boost to his usage rate. So I like Shake Milton here versus the New York Knicks. Okay, another point guard that I like, I've got a stud for you. I like Luka Doncic from the Dallas Mavericks playing the Portland Trailblazers, who have the 8th worst defense overall, and they give up the 2nd most fantasy points to opposing point guards. Luka Doncic has averaged 53.6 fantasy points per game on the season, playing an average of 36 minutes per game with a 36% usage rate. He scored 61, 74, and 60 fantasy points in the last 3 games, playing 38, 42, and 38 minutes. He's projected at 55.5 fantasy points here tonight, and that's 5.1 times value. He's $10,800 FanDuel salary, and he's $200 more on DraftKings. Now, he scored 61, 61, 47, 51, and 55 fantasy points in his last 5 games versus the Trailblazers. And Vegas thinks there's going to be 230.5 points scored in this game. It's a great matchup, so I like Luka Doncic here versus the Portland Trailblazers. Okay, let's take a look at the shooting guard position. I got a value play for you. I like Talen Horton-Tucker from the LA Lakers playing the Phoenix Suns, who have a good defense overall, and they've been good versus opposing shooting guards, but Talen Horton-Tucker has averaged 16.9 fantasy points per game on the season, playing an average of 18 minutes per game with a 21% usage rate. But he scored 20, 13, and 30 fantasy points in the last 3 games, playing 20, 18, and 26 minutes. He's projected at 25 fantasy points here tonight, which is 6.3 times value. I think that projection is right on because I expect him to score between 20 and 30 fantasy points here tonight. So average that out at 25. I like that projection. So he's $4,000 FanDuel salary and he's $200 more on DraftKings. Now he scored 18, 18, and 30 fantasy points in his last 3 games versus the Phoenix Suns. Vegas thinks there's going to be 215.5 points scored in this game. So I like Talen Horton-Tucker as a value play here versus the Phoenix Suns. Before I continue with the picks, I'm excited today because we added a new contest for everyone watching. If you want to enter the drawing for $100 PayPal, all you need to do is like this video, hit that subscribe button, and make a quick comment below to be entered into the drawing. We'll reply to a random comment and let you know that you won, and then we'll send you $100 PayPal. So it's that easy, and we pick a new winner every Saturday and announce them in our video. So get your comment in now so I can add another entry for you. Okay, another value play for you. I like Tim Hardaway Jr. from the Dallas Mavericks playing the Portland Trailblazers, who have the 8th worst defense overall, and although they've been pretty good versus opposing shooting guards, Tim Hardaway Jr. has averaged 24.3 fantasy points per game on the season, playing an average of 30 minutes per game with a 23% usage rate. He scored 38, 22, and 27 fantasy points in the last 3 games, playing 40, 36, and 30 minutes. He's projected at 25.5 fantasy points here tonight. Now on FanDuel, that's 6.1 times value. Because he's only $4,200 FanDuel salary, he is $1,500 more on DraftKings, which he can still hit value on DraftKings, but that's just a smash FanDuel price. I love that FanDuel price. And he scored 38, 12, 32, 17, and 35 fantasy points in his last 5 games versus the Trailblazers. So he would have been crushing value in 3 of his last 5 games. And Vegas thinks there's going to be 230.5 points scored in this game. So you have a high scoring game. So I like Tim Hardaway Jr., especially on FanDuel here versus the Portland Trailblazers. Okay, let's take a look at the small forward position. I got another value play for you. I like Otto Porter Jr. from the Chicago Bulls playing the Detroit Pistons, who have a middle-of-the-pack defense overall, and they're middle-of-the-pack defending opposing small forwards. Otto Porter Jr. has averaged 21.6 fantasy points per game on the season, playing an average of 22 minutes per game with a 20% usage rate. He scored 32 fantasy points in 28 minutes last game. He's projected at 20.3 fantasy points here tonight, and on FanDuel, that's still 5.8 times value. He's only $3,500 FanDuel salary. He is $1,000 more on DraftKings, so I love that FanDuel price. Still playable over there on DraftKings. And he did score 36 fantasy points in his last game versus the Detroit Pistons. Vegas thinks there's going to be 217.5 points scored in this game. So I like Otto Porter Jr., especially on FanDuel, here versus the Detroit Pistons. Okay, another small forward that I like is OG Anunoby from the Toronto Raptors playing the Cleveland Cavaliers, who have the 11th worst defense overall, and they give up the 10th most fantasy points to opposing small forwards. OG Anunoby has averaged 28.9 fantasy points per game on the season, playing an average of 33 minutes per game with a 17% usage rate. He came back last game and scored 38 fantasy points in 34 minutes. He's projected at 29.4 fantasy points here tonight. That's 5.7 times value. He's $5,200 FanDuel salary and $100 more on DraftKings. He scored 12, 28, 27, 18, and 33 fantasy points in his last 5 games versus the Cavaliers. And Vegas thinks there's going to be 217 points scored in this game. I think this is a great play on both sites. His price is pretty low given the upside that he has. So I like OG Anunoby here versus the Cleveland Cavaliers. Okay, let's take a look at the power forward position. I'm going to give you another value play here. I like Lamar Stevens from the Cleveland Cavaliers playing the Toronto Raptors, who have the 9th worst defense overall, and they give up the 11th most fantasy points to opposing power forwards. Lamar Stevens, he scored 33 fantasy points in 17 minutes last game. He's projected at 22 fantasy points here tonight, and that's 6.3 times value. He's $3,500 FanDuel salary and $100 less on DraftKings. So Vegas thinks there's going to be 217 points scored in this game. It's probably a tournament play only, but I think he's got a great shot at crushing value here tonight. So I like Lamar Stevens here versus the Toronto Raptors. Okay, another power forward that I like, with Ben Simmons out, I like Tobias Harris from the Philadelphia 76ers playing the New York Knicks, who have a good defense overall, and they've been good versus opposing power forwards. Tobias Harris has averaged 38.6 fantasy points per game on the season, playing an average of 34 minutes per game with a 24% usage rate. He scored 60, 43, and 49 fantasy points in his last 3 games, playing 30, 43, and 37 minutes. He's projected at 42 fantasy points here tonight, and that's 5.1 times value. He's 8,300 FanDuel salary, and he's 300 more on DraftKings. So Tobias Harris has scored 49, 32, 58, 27, and 33 fantasy points in his last 5 games versus the Knicks, but he should have an increased usage rate, so I like Tobias Harris here versus the New York Knicks. Real quick, guys, I got great news. For a limited time, we're offering a full 30-day trial to Draft Dashboard. You can try all of our DFS tools for all sports. You can try the Position Optimizer, where you can see the top players ranked for each position. And we added a new Player Trends tool, where you can see the top salary differences between FanDuel and DraftKings. It's a really good tool to help you pick out value for the site that you're playing on. Oh, and if you're tired of doing research every day, we just added a cheat sheet that shows hand-picked plays for the slate. No confusing stat lines, no headaches, just a simple cheat sheet that shows the absolute best players for your lineups. Okay, moving on to the center position. I'm going to give you a couple of FanDuel center picks, and then I'll give you a DraftKings play. So, I like DeAndre Jordan from the Brooklyn Nets playing the Washington Wizards, who have the second worst defense overall, and they give up the second most fantasy points to opposing centers. DeAndre Jordan has averaged 22.6 fantasy points per game on the season, playing an average of 23 minutes per game with a 13% usage rate. He scored 24, 13, and 21 fantasy points in the last 3 games, playing 23, 20, and 30 minutes. He's projected at 24 fantasy points here tonight. Now on FanDuel, that's 5.4 times value. He's only 4,400 FanDuel salary, and he's 700 more on DraftKings. He scored 23, 8, 14, 34, and 34 fantasy points in his last 5 games versus the Wizards. So 3 out of those 5 games he would have crushed value. And Vegas thinks there's going to be 245.5 points scored in this game. It's a fantastic matchup, a high-scoring game, a fast-paced game. Got to get some exposure to this one. So I like DeAndre Jordan here versus the Washington Wizards. Okay, now a FanDuel center play here. I like Jarrett Allen from the Cleveland Cavaliers playing the Toronto Raptors, who have the 9th worst defense overall, and they're middle of the pack defending opposing centers. Jarrett Allen has averaged 32.1 fantasy points per game on the season, playing an average of 28 minutes per game with a 17% usage rate. He scored 35, 19, and 29 fantasy points in the last 3 games, playing 32, 33, and 26 minutes. He's projected at 33.6 fantasy points here tonight. Now on FanDuel, that's 5.3 times value. He's only 6,300 FanDuel salary, but he is 1,200 more on DraftKings, so probably a FanDuel only play for me. And let's see, he scored 31, 34, 44, 33, and 33 fantasy points in his last 5 games versus the Toronto Raptors. So excellent player versus team history. And we know Vegas thinks there's going to be 217 points scored in this game. So I like Jarrett Allen here versus the Toronto Raptors. Okay, now a DraftKings center pick for you. I like Chris Boucher from the Toronto Raptors playing the Cleveland Cavaliers, who have the 11th worst defense overall, and they give up the 4th most fantasy points to opposing centers. Chris Boucher has averaged 30.4 fantasy points per game on the season, playing an average of 24 minutes per game with a 21% usage rate. He scored 23, 44, and 27 fantasy points in the last 3 games, playing 20, 29, and 26 minutes. So he's projected at 32.9 fantasy points here tonight. Now on FanDuel, that's only 4.4 times value, because he's priced at 7,400 FanDuel salary, but he's 1,100 less on DraftKings. So I love that DraftKings price. This is a DraftKings play only for me, and I think it's a tournament play. Even though his price is pretty good on DraftKings, his minutes have been a little sporadic as of late, although he's still scored 23 to 44 fantasy points in his last 3 games. So a little bit of risk with this play, but I think he's a great DraftKings tournament play. So I like Chris Boucher here versus the Cleveland Cavaliers. If you want to try all these daily fantasy tools for yourself, click the link in the description below this video or just go to draftdashboard.com. You can use our DFS lineup optimizer to build quality lineups using our picks and your own custom player pool. Click the link in the description below this video and try all these daily fantasy tools right now. Thanks so much for watching. Oh, and don't forget to subscribe to this channel and hit that bell icon so you can get instant updates whenever we post a new video. Thank you so much for watching, everyone. If you enjoyed this video, please smash that like button and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Oh, and please comment below with your favorite player for this NBA slate. I love to hear what you guys have to think. Thanks again, and good luck.